Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our CAWASA Wednesday webinar. We missed a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, around October, it's a bit of travel period for us, but we are back for this week. And next week, we will be at CWWA. So we'll be out of session, but we will resume promptly the week after. Welcome on board. And this afternoon, we have a special guest. He's no stranger to us, Mr. Bob Paul, who is the principal at his E5 Solutions Consulting, advancing the circular economy. So today he's going to be speaking to us, as you can see on the screen, on taking an integrated system thinking approach to advance policy and technology innovation for water and wastewater systems. Over to you, Bob.
Okay, thanks, Ignatius, and thanks also to Valerie and colleague Mike, who kind of tapped my shoulder about opportunity to speak. So this is always great to speak on. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and this is an opportunity for me to kind of digest kind of how I think and how is an opportunity for jurisdictions to kind of think about some of these things from a broader holistic viewpoint. So I'll get started here and then I'll give a bit of an introduction. Let's see here. There we go, moving. So a little bit about my consulting. I worked in the provincial government, British Columbia. My expertise spans over many different ministries, from geology to clean energy funding to environmental protection, agriculture innovation. So it's been kind of a nice way to kind of look at the environment through those lenses. And so today I'm not with the government. I left in 2021 and started focusing on my consulting. E5 Solutions. And so today I'm involved at the University of Victoria, which has an industrial ecology master's program. So I helped design one of the classes there on recycling and industrial symbiosis. I have worked for the beer industry in Canada, which is the beer store in Ontario. If you've been up here in Canada, the beer store is pretty big, but they respond to the regulation in BC on producer responsibility for beer packaging. So I worked with them for about 3 years after I left government. I was also tapped on the shoulders. This is pretty innovative for me and Tesla Motors, but to design a take-back plan for lithium batteries from end-of-life vehicles. So there's first generation vehicles that are reaching end of life, and how do we collect those essentially the batteries and even the motor systems that drive the wheels in the cars. How do we take them back and get them back into recycling and the production system to make new batteries again? So I've done some of that work, and also in recent years I've teamed up with the Italian Trade Agency, because I go over to Italy to one of the largest conference trade shows that's held in Europe, Ecomundo, a place where you can visualize a lot of solutions with technologies, and it's just a great place to go. So I highly recommend if you get an opportunity to go. It's coming up in November, and to go see Ecomundo. And then last year, I did some interesting work to attract investment on clean technology for Reeve and Council in Alberta County. That's right in the center of oil and gas in Canada, and they're looking at transitioning, attracting new investment into the county. So just to give you an idea, I do a broad spectrum of work. It's all through the knowledge gained in the past and being a systems thinker. So defining systems thinking, there's a lot of definitions out there. And this one, you've probably read many definitions, but this one, I just picked this one that kind of just hit me and just, resonates with me more. It's a way of understanding the world around us and how we examine those relationships between different elements within a larger system. And here, for you guys, is water and wastewater systems. So we look at the individual components and look at it in a holistic way. And then we start, once we analyze, we start maybe see patterns and feedback loops and interdependencies. And that's the whole part of not just one individual doing it, but many from many different disciplines doing it. So some of the characteristics, it really helps to embrace life cycle thinking of the whole system, and we can really focus on pinpointing the problems in the system. Allows for a broader perspective of thinking and interdisciplinary thoughts coming into one place. And then it also will tell us whether what we're involved in is whether we're looking at something linear where waste is created, or actually it's something that's circular where we're able to look at the potential of resource recovery of the nutrients and energy of water and wastewater systems. And also further integrated systems help reinforce our focusing on the problem right to the root cause. It also helps us do critical thinking and formulate innovative thinking from that. And sometimes we're going to find more than one solution through the process. And overall, it's really important an aspect of a lot of operations and business or technology, whatever you want to look at, but testing the system for efficiency and effectiveness. So this graphic I pulled from the CWA, Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association conference themes. And you can see these themes will repeat themselves in many different ways. You can write them up many different ways, but they will continue to repeat by them and other organizations, not just in the Caribbean, but around the world. We're all looking to take on these challenges and these themes to find some of the connections. And there are connections, and that's through systems thinking. We will find a lot of overlapping things as we dive into each of these subjects. But one of the interesting problems we find is when we go to the conferences and we focus on one theme, we don't have time to go to the speaker in the other session and look at what are potential nexus points. So I wish we could find a different way or a platform for dialogue on tackling some of these complex themes that we put out that we're trying to get experts to speak on, but we don't put those experts in the same room. So I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the importance of systems thinking in anything we do, and in particular, even conferences, to make them more fruitful for us. So utility water value prosperity goals. So this is kind of some fundamentals. We want to conserve, obviously, in the space of water, given the challenges with climate change and drought and even extreme events, flooding and storms. We need to understand our water from our consumption habits and where are we losing it. And revenue loss water is obviously a big thing. That's one, but there's also other potential to understand where are the losses happening, and then what actions are we taking to conserve in the system. And then to protect, we want to look at understanding the pollution pathways that impact on wastewater systems, and it's obviously solid waste. Solid waste has a huge impact on systems when you're not properly managing it. And then we also want, one of the goals is also to enhance water. And so for the sake of, human consumption and economic prosperity to occur. And then most importantly, sustaining biodiversity. So here's just a graphic by H2O Global News that borrowing and showing you. You can just see where are the pollution impacts on water. This is a sort of a global snapshot. It may not apply in every case for SIDS and Caribbean islands, but this is the deep dive we must do, and a lot of the work that's being done is trying to focus on overcoming some of the economic production issues that impact on water and waste that's generated from those from processes. And climate change impacts on water, well, you can see, I mentioned extreme events. We got drought going on, and Caribbean is it's not isolated from that. In the summer months, we're seeing drought. So what adaptation changes are going on in the economic system? What is the innovation pathway in the economic system to look at finding cleaner sources of water? There's a lot that we could be doing, and obviously the subject is very diverse and deep. But we seem to spend a lot of time on collecting information and studying it, keep studying it, but we are not pushing to looking at more solutions and how to try to solve some of the complex problems. So the circular economy subsect. So when I speak on the circular economy, we must recognize there's these subsectors that are very important and overlain with the fabric of water, which crosses all the lines. So resource recovery, that's in water and wastewater is like we're looking at nutrients, that are being discharged or we're not recovering through advanced technologies. And in the Caribbean, nutrient-loaded waters and dissolved CO2 in the oceans and photosynthesis has given us the sargassum issue. You're well aware of that. So there's opportunities to kind of better understand how we can do resource recovery and work with sargassum. I'll talk a little bit about some ideas a little bit down the road here. So renewable energy, we use, kinetic energy in hydro power systems. That's just giving where water plays a role, right? But we can also look at as we move water in piping infrastructure, can we extract the kinetic energy? So we need to think a little bit broader, right? And then the aspect of the bioeconomy and the blue economy. The bioeconomy is a space where we're using waste biomass or purposely grown biomass. And if we look in the Caribbean, it has a rich history of, with sugarcane and bagasse. So, can we use that, waste to be more efficient in our systems? And the blue economy is the biomass economy, but it's essentially fishing industry and shipping industry, all of that operates. And then again, water is a crucial part. And industrial symbiosis is, I talk about this a lot because our built environment's not set up for creating synergy between companies to co-locate. And so where is the opportunity where water synergy can happen? So there's opportunities to examine in that space. The sharing economy is essentially, what I mean here is essentially the gig economy. So we know about Airbnbs. Why Airbnb works around the world is because it's driven by data, and you got a place in Silicon Valley that collects all this information and powers it. Now we have AI. Well, guess what? AI requires a lot of energy, and you have to cool these facilities. So water is going to play an important role around the world, just in that space. So there's a lot of integration thinking that needs to happen there. And even the Caribbean, I don't know how many data centers it might be, but they're going to be using a lot of energy, and they're going to need water. And is it ocean water or is it fresh water? Like, it all depends on where the facilities are located and the pressures that are there. So applying systems thinking to the Caribbean. So one of the things that, my background from government is producer responsibility model, where the end of life product or hazardous materials are managed by the producers, not by the local authorities that are funded by the tax system. So it's a fundamental shift to producers. And we want to get, into that kind of model. So the polluter, the user of the product and the materials is paying for it. And the pressure is on the producer to provide a cleaner product for society to use and to remove toxicity. So that's the mechanisms behind having a model like this and why government should be using more of it. So this could easily be coordinated, in the Caribbean, and I've talked about OECS and CARICOM stepping it up. Essentially, if they don't step it up, then the threats in the economic system will be there, showing failure from waste and wastewater systems collapsing if we don't sustain them. And obviously want to highlight CWA and CAWASA and Ignatius and Valerie, Operators Without Borders, and others out there that are, helping to continually implement programs, initiatives to support moving in the right direction. And also want to stress there might be some of this stuff going on, but I think more of it needs to happen for academic institutions to link together to kind of look at what needs to be studied, start measuring important metrics and evaluating progress for continuous improvement. So this slide I produced, and I presented this the first time I came to the Caribbean in St. Kitts and Nevis in 2019. And this is to show borrowing the conceptual philosophy of extended producer responsibility where it comes to consumable products like pharmaceuticals, paints, and lubricating oil, things that potentially are lost in the environment or cannot always be collected and safely dealt with, and they get into the water system and the wastewater system. So imagine, now we talk about producers in island countries, you might not have the producer of the product, but by definition, you can define the producer being the importer, and the importer now has to take some responsibility for bringing that product into the nation and having responsibility over it. So what we're doing is broaden our thinking to look at applying from solid waste to water and wastewater. Where can we tag responsibility on a producer in a nation to partially fund improvement in wastewater systems? So this is going to stand. I don't think it's been done in any way like anywhere around the world, but I'm bringing this to you to kind of accelerate this kind of thinking in the Caribbean, because this just makes sense. And I'm sure you'll have questions for me. This is a very deep topic we can dive into, but I think there's some value here to explore this further together. So SID's financing of water and wastewater infrastructure. So I mentioned producer responsibility. We can try to address the toxicity and chemicals that enter into systems. Then we talk about public-private partnerships. They can also be part of the producer responsibility model where money has come in to help improve the infrastructure. And then the discussion right now, because of climate change, is the global north helping the global south on climate finance. And as you know, Prime Minister Mia Mottley's been trying to champion this thing, and I think she's making some headway. But more the story that needs to come from this is islands from water and wastewater and waste need to develop really good solid plans that can chase this climate finance money that's going to come in and be facilitated. So we have the Caribbean Development Fund. I'm a little bit familiar with that, but there's probably other pots of money. So we need collectively to look at accessing money intelligently in a world where financing and partnerships are becoming challenging because of inflation. So islands, industrial ecology. So I just want to share this. So this is really new. So I talk about Dr. Simran Singh. Some of you might know that name. So he's leads a research group by the University of Waterloo. He's an islands expert scholar around the world, doing work in the Indian Ocean countries, Bay of Bengal, Pacific Rim, and a little bit in the Caribbean. He has some connections, but he's part of the International Industrial Ecology Society. He's a former secretary of the society. And so he got funding to do this island metabolism video. And I'm on the islands board of the society with him, along with some other professors from around the world. And he's asked me to come on board because of my policy background. So we have academics plus policy that points in the direction for potential solutions and implementation, moving us in the right direction. So I'm involved there. So this video just got launched yesterday at the Adaptation Futures Conference in Christchurch, New Zealand. And there's a link in this video. So if this presentation is shared, You'll be able to see the documentary. A lot of the pictures you might see of the islands and academics speaking from around the world, but a lot of the videotaping that I was part of was done in Aruba last year. And this, if the link doesn't work, go to YouTube and just type that in. It should come up. It's about 33 minutes long. So finding the solutions through collaboration, cooperation, and commitment. So, ask yourself, are we working in an integrated system philosophy in the work we're doing, right? Do we really understand the holistic parts, and what are the nexus points, and are we being efficient and, effective in the outcomes we want to see? And, and then measuring, from source, distribution, use, and reuse is big, because we need to apply innovation to reuse water, right? We can't make more of it, but we need to reuse it if it gets contaminated. So having good, strong policy and programs to allow that to happen in jurisdictions is a good thing. And this is not just for SIDS, this is happening all around the world. Reuse is being talked about, right? So Metabolism of the Islands is a platform. There is a website. So Dr. Simran Singh has a website. And it's an opportunity for you to investigate where any research report you do, data sets, you have an opportunity to load it up here for further research. Just grab this information and apply it in further research and study. And then we are now in the world of AI, and AI is going to help us formulate more interesting solutions, hopefully, and point out the gaps that we need to close off. So this is a good platform for islands to put in water, energy, material data from any report into the system that's been created. And I think this is a great thing. It might make our lives easier, because right now I'm sure all the islands that do any kind of study, it might be sitting on a shelf and it might not be accessible to academics and others who could do something with it. And I also want to stress the importance of partnerships with academia. We need to do it not only in the Caribbean region, but we need to go internationally, where important expertise is there to bring into the discussion. So I just want to stress that for everyone. So opportunity for next steps. We could establish sort of a Caribbean-wide critical thinking kind of group where we bring in the experts to talk about these things. And then, we take the lead, but we hold each other accountable for our actions and things we need to do, so we can actually help, build a better environment and build for climate resiliency. And the opportunities are there. We have CAWASA, Operators Without Borders, and CWWA, and there's others out there that continue to educate. And we need to keep pushing the education, but we also need to start implementing, using some of that different financing models to make projects happen. And CWWA has always been coordinating the high-level forum on water and waste. And I've been part of some of those discussions with ministers in the past. And I understand the next conference, I don't know if I should announce this, but I heard from a source, it's in Grenada. So I'm looking forward to maybe popping back into the Caribbean in 2026, and we'll miss Belize this year. And it's a great place to have this dialogue, or even pre-dialogue for actions that need to be taken in the region. And I'll end it at that, and hopefully we'll have some good questions and dialogue from this presentation.
Right, thank you, Bob. And that's an interesting piece that you mentioned about. I'm certainly going to look forward to viewing it. It's about metabolism of islands, and so that I can be better informed about the platform itself, and to be able to share that information with other partners. I'll now open the floor, so that if we have participants who wish to comment or ask a few questions to you, please proceed. Yes, Valerie.
Bob, how is it going in the Caribbean with these types of projects?
Well, Valerie, I don't know. I have to rely on you because you're closer to it. You're in Barbados right now. I'm not there, but I'm always
Worked here
looking.
for a while, and you've made representation.
Well, let's put it this way. After, being involved, coming down to the conferences, presenting, and I showed that slide of the themes. I think what I guess I maybe I'm so naive, but people can't go to every single room to listen to every presentation, right? But there's a lot of good things being shared. And one of the things I find is when we go to conference, we get all excited, we hear something, but we go back to our office, and then what next? We don't have further dialogue, we don't get together, we don't say what was good, right? And there's a whole collection of information that CWWA has, but I've never seen any of our presentations of those that have presented on their website or in some collective form somewhere where it can be accessed by anyone. Am I right?
I think it's
No, they have websites.
yeah.
Oh no. Wait.
Well, the thing is, I don't know that I couldn't say about, I never really scoured all the website of the CWWA, but I know that they do prepare a conference report. I think
Yes.
there's normally a rapporteur who would pick up, but I'm not sure for all the events that are happening around the conference, but it's something certainly for consideration.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
just think
I do think that TWA has records, has a website with presentations, because I gave a presentation 2 years ago and I used the link to my presentation in my report.
Okay.
So my presentation was on their website, not a recording of the presentation, but the PowerPoint I used during the presentation was on the website. But if you refer to the recording, that was not done. That's correct. Because I actually wanted a recording, but there was no recording. Nobody taking a video. But the presentation as presented in PowerPoint, which you have to send in a few days ahead, that was on the website.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for that. We haven't met. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was in Aruba doing some of this filming, I couldn't make it to the CWWA conference in 2024. So I'd sent in a recording, but I was going to come on live to answer questions. But that never happened due to technical difficulties. So I don't know like what becomes of all this stuff that we do. And but just to let everybody know, like it's a pretty, using my background in policy and regulation on extended producer responsibility from British Columbia. Can you imagine if we had a beverage deposit system in the Caribbean islands? That's how big. So that's like CARICOM to think about, OECS to think about this, and how do we implement those kind of things in a region that's struggling with plastics, beverage containers, other packaging, and then more importantly, can we reuse, set up a reuse system where we use more glass than plastic? Aluminum is going to have its challenges in its availability because there's only so much around, and it goes into a lot of lightweighting, including packaging around the world. And so glasses reuse is going to be one of the big things that I've been advocating for. And I think the Caribbean had a trading system with the beer industry for glass beer bottles like we do in Canada. It's doable, but they need to talk to each other, and then government needs to bring them together to talk about what it looks like. So.
There is a project in the Caribbean called Zero Waste, run by UNEP, that exactly addresses your concerns. And it is at this moment focusing on plastics, but it is actually reducing actually the waste component overall by using the In the old days, it was 3 hours. Now it's already 10 hours. So that is actually being carried out. And my experience with glass reuse, basically it is beer bottles that are being reused. And there are different mechanisms in the countries where there is a deposit on beer bottles. But the countries, they'll deal with it differently, and the retailers don't always want to take back the bottles. And it becomes a bit of a hassle. In some countries, it becomes a hassle for the consumer to get the bottles returned and get your deposit back. But anyway.
Yeah, well, like to show kind of what we've done here in British Columbia, because I've been part of this in the past for over 25 years on this, and we started the whole beverage thing in 1970 and evolved it further under a new regulatory framework, and it's generally running pretty good. We have depot systems, about 186 depots around the province that collect not just beverage containers that are regulated, but electronics, hazardous waste, you name it. And then we have separate locations that'll collect tires. All this stuff, if we don't have interventions for it and solutions, then it's going to end up in the environment, and hence the impact on water and wastewater systems.
Yeah, I think some of the countries do have returnable containers legislation. I think Barbados, Trinidad, I think there were some attempts in St. Lucia, but generally where you have the manufacturers of beverages and they use bottles, glass bottles, they would recycle those bottles or reuse them in the production system. So there's a you wouldn't find these being discarded easily because they got a value on them. I think there, yes, as Ton indicated, the UNEP has the zero waste project, which involves the collection of plastics, waste plastics. And I think there are also some, in some of the countries, the exporters of, I think, private sector people who purchase or collect plastic waste from different sources, and I think flatten or package them for shipping, to other places. I think there was also in some jurisdictions, I think even to cardboard. I know, for example, in Georgetown, I've seen, the people who ply in the trade and they crush the cardboard boxes and take them to this dealer for export. And then there is that to do with the scrap metal industry, which has caused quite a bit of problems in the region, on the other hand, where people have been, taking things that are not waste. It's more like vandalism then, and
Yeah, because they
theft.
have a value to it.
Yeah, because there's a value. So challenges with copper and so on, right? So that's happening. But I think for the at the CWWA, for the second part of the conference, which is on the waste, I think we would be able to get some good traction in there in that discussion.
Yeah, because some documents that were funded in the past, when Wayne Williams was the executive director, was, wanting to support a circular economy. The reports are talking about a circular economy, but you really got to know like where you want to start, right? So we did a lot of work, and some of the work it's important to know is to classify the waste types that are problematic, and then you focus in on them and who's bringing it in. And we in British Columbia, it's a province of 10 provinces in Canada. Everyone has some sort of program in Canada, but we do it at a provincial level, so the borders are open on trade. So sometimes we don't have that producer there. It's the importer or the retailer. It's the first responsibility tagged, touching it and taking ownership of it, right? If you don't do that, if you don't pay for it up front and get the producer to do it, then guess what? the people who need to want to do the right thing at the back end, in the absence of this policy, won't want to spend the money to get it to where it needs to get to, so it gets to end up in the environment because it costs too much. So if you're going to consume it, you pay for it up front.
I think, Kevin, you wanted to make an intervention. I think I saw your.
Yeah, no, that was a great discussion. And Bob, just great presentation.
Thanks.
As always. I'm going to switch to water reuse. I'm going to make a point of information first, and then I want to get your perspectives. Just for your knowledge and others on here that may not know, CWWA started a wastewater specialist group 2 years ago. We just celebrated recently our 2-year anniversary. And within that group, there is a subcommittee that is putting together a water reuse action plan for the region, for the whole Caribbean region. And it's being patterned after the United States Environmental Protection Agency's National Water Reuse Action Plan. So your timing on this presentation is good, because we're in the process of looking at what EPA did and how it can relate to the Caribbean. We're also starting to see some of the countries have water policy and regulations. Trinidad and Tobago recently passed water reuse regulations, and Barbados is in the process of constructing a water reuse facility with funding from the Green Fund. So what goes into your presentation about seeking alternative funding that maybe a water utility or company wouldn't traditionally look at. What I'd like from your perspectives as looking at internationally, beyond the United States and the Caribbean, what you're seeing with water reuse, particularly with SIDS in Asia and other places. You mentioned the India region, but any perspectives you can get linking water reuse into the overall water circular economy?
Yeah, I haven't, Kevin, I haven't followed closely on water reuse, other than it is being talked about here because of climate change. You know, I happen to be in an area of British Columbia. Some of the times in the summer is semi-desert, okay? And you know, the water restrictions go on, right? And then we have our forest fires, and some of the fires close to home this year were human caused, not by lightning. That's generally the natural way. But you know, water conservation is being talked about more and more because we have the agriculture community, we have a wine industry, and we have a fruit growing industry that relies on it. But what's interesting, what's impacting further to the lake system that exists in the Okanagan is over fertilization, right? We have lake weed growing, and we have these skimmers that go out and try to scoop up the weed, and it's no different than the sargassum. So, you know, we need to look at with water reuse is one is to clean it, but also to pull out the nutrients as fertilizers, right? So that's one of the you know, things to focus on is to look at the circularity of nutrients from wastewater versus buying new fertilizers for agriculture, right?
That's right, and redirecting those nutrients that are most likely being part of an effluent to a surface water onto the land and use it beneficially. Now that's good, and I'll just also mention, say the date, November 18th, CWWA Wastewater Specialist Group is going to have a full day webinar. Tom's on the agenda. We have the EPA's, hopefully she'll be back to work.
I was going to say, do you have an EPA anymore?
She's not at work now because, as many of you know, our government is currently shut down. But that's another webinar. Tune in afterwards. Yeah, please save the date, and in case we don't have another CAWASA webinar before then, I wanted to get that out there as well. But thanks, Bob. We'll talk more about water reuse, and particularly the data centers. Look that up. Amazon's gone to water reuse for cooling data centers. Certainly something I think we're going to see water reuse where people didn't think they needed water reuse previously because of these large water needs of these large data centers.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Kevin.
I haven't heard from someone who's always speaking on that, and he's in line with that. Timothy, your time. I was going to call on you, but you raise your hand.
Oh my, hi, good day. Timothy Augustus here out of Trinidad and Tobago, professional operator. If I remember correctly, I think you had an area there that, for funding of wastewater treatment plants. Is it by private entities? Is there any model or case in your country that has a system to actually fund some of these wastewater treatment plant facilities, because it's quite expensive to run these facilities, especially power-wise and otherwise. So is there any way that you could assist us with that?
Yeah, thanks, Timothy, for that question. I haven't been following. These are things we have talked about for a long time, and I know they exist. I'd have to do a deep dive on where the partnership is. But one of the things that I've seen companies out of Europe, like Veolia, are in partnership in Alberta running kind of their wastewater system. So that could be, so it could be a 5-year contract where, they might be doing resource recovery, right? As part of their business model for running it. They might be benefiting from that. And so that's where companies like Veolia and others out there that are advanced might have technologies that can be applied, and where their bottom line, along with capital funding to build these kind of facilities, their operational bottom line improves because they're doing resource recovery. It could be putting in anaerobic digestion systems that give you the biogas to be sold for use in the jurisdiction, and then biosolid or nutrient recovery fertilizers from the wastewater systems. But there's of advanced tertiary systems up here where biosolids is a problem. What to do with it? Land application is very challenging. So I just want to share with you, now that you have asked that partnership question, and there might be a partnership in this scenario. But if any of you have been up to Vancouver, well, Valerie lives in Vancouver, and I'm not sure if she knows this, but Metro Vancouver, 6 wastewater treatment plants, population about almost 4.5 million in the region. And they were sending their biosolids into the interior, trucking it, right? Trying to find a place for it to land somewhere. Somebody would take it. So some of it went to mine sites, some of it went to open range land where cattle range, and then that got stopped in some places. But it's a $25 million operational problem for them. So I happened back in 2011, I was working on the microalgae file for the BC government, and I was looking at, if we're going to do advanced things with biomass or algae biomass, what technology can we apply that uplifts its value in the best and shortest way? And I came across this technology called hydrothermal liquefaction, essentially converting any biomass media into an oil, and a bio oil that you could send to an oil refinery to make low carbon fuels. So guess what? I shared that information. I came across the technology. I shared it with the head engineer there, and they would proceed a few years after to test biosolids with this in a lab in the US, and they made oil from it. What is happening today on the most advanced innovation that I know of in wastewater with biosolids in the world is they're building a $33 million facility at Anasis Island that will take biosolids now from the region and turn it into oil, and they'll send it to the refinery for them to make low carbon fuels. So there's integrated systems thinking at its best, right? Where you uplifted something that was a problem, cost you a lot, now you turn it into a revenue source. So that's kind of what story I like to share with you, is like, I know the Caribbean region might be far away from this kind of stuff, but we need to set our minds and framework on an integrated systems pathway and find, first of all, small incremental wins before we get to the big ones.
Excellent. Thank you.
I want to react to that because on the 18th of November, my presentation during the during the symposium organized by CWA, I'm going to talk about just that.
Okay.
Where I'm going to talk about a survey I did many years ago on the operational status of wastewater treatment plants, including the packaged plants, which in generally perform extremely poor because of lack of knowledge for operation. But there are mechanisms in the Caribbean where the private sector actually fulfills that role, and owners, whatever it may be, offices, shopping malls, hospitals, which do not have the capacity to run these plants, can outsource the operation to a private sector, and then the operation significantly increases. So my presentation will be on that topic on the 18th of November.
John, just on that, I think the other thing to think about is, depending on wastewater technology systems, is if you're gonna, do you build one? It all depends on how big of the population you're serving, or do you build more decentralized systems? And so there's also a big thing that wastewater has a connection into is, I don't know if there's much of a housing issue in the Caribbean. I haven't followed, but we have a lot of housing issues up here. So we can open up new areas with decentralized systems and low-cost technologies brought in from other parts of the world. So those are the kind of the things that I look at.
The French have good experience with decentralized facilities for smaller communities, and so they have a smaller sewer system, and then it goes into a lagoon, and it is also a lagoon for stormwater balancing, so you reduce flood risks. And Ignatius is now working also on nature-based solutions introduction for wastewater treatment in Dominica and in St. Lucia. So there is some experience with that. But in general, some countries of the Caribbean culture is very much against open wastewater treatment like lagoons and so. But there's a cultural stigma to deal with. But the French have good experience, and now the project, also some Ignatius can talk about it more detail on implementing that in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's good. I mean, I like decentralized systems if we can implement them, smaller to create new space and housing, and where we factor in nutrient recovery reuse on a scale that makes financial sense. That's how we need to build them, where they can pay for themselves over time from revenue sources. So so anaerobic digestion, small scale nutrient recovery, all that stuff working together is what we need to do if we want to also look at the payback, accelerating payback on capital.
Right. I see, Timothy, is that a legacy hand or that's a new hand?
Oh no, I forgot to take it down.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, well, as Ton was indicating, that we had already this project with its nature-based solutions project with the Water Office of Martinique. In fact, in Martinique and Guadeloupe, the French authorities, they have worked on these constructed wetlands, and it's used for many of the new residential areas, as well as they have done it for some industrial areas where you have some. We visited a few. There's one manufacturer of fruit juices, and of course they do have the aerated ponds, and then it filters through the constructed wetlands, and also some of the rum producers. They do have these as well. So we are trying to introduce them through a pilot project in St. Lucia, Dominica, and Cuba. But most of the Caribbean, it's really decentralized, except for some parts of the capitals where you have central sewage treatment, and some of them don't even have treatment for that matter. So it's a work in progress, actually. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Ignatius for sharing that.
Good. Well, I think we are getting to the top of the hour, and if we have, I don't know if there are any other questions or comments for Bob. If we don't have any others, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon and thank Bob immensely for his contribution. And we look forward to hearing from you again, albeit this time it's virtual, but we should see again in the near future at one of the conferences. And so thank you everyone for joining this, our CAWASA Wednesday webinar. I'm Ignatius Jean, Executive Director at CAWASA, signing off our 17th edition for 2025. And I think we're going to resume in the first week in November, and I'll keep you posted. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Valerie and Kevin and all of you. Bye.
Okay.
Ignatius,
Goodbye.
we'll catch up with you after the conference, see what was
Sure.
discussed, and let's talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers. All the
Okay.
best.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.